Hey guys, it's Libby, and today I'm going to be talking about the books that I read in October. In the last month, I have finished 4 novels, 1 collection of short stories, and 1 play. I also participated in Victober, which was a month-long readathon, and in Mercedes' Autumn Readathon, which was a week-long readathon. So the first thing that I finished was a Victorian novel. It was Desperate Remedies by Thomas Hardy. I gave this puppy its own review, so I won't go on about it here. Let's just say Thomas Hardy wrote a thriller, and I gave it 4 stars. The next book that I finished was Untold by Rees Brennan, and I just recently got done with Unmade by Rees Brennan. These are books 2 and 3 in the Lindbergh Legacy series. Book 1 is called Unspoken, and I think that Unspoken is a good title for the first book. I do not think that these books have good titles. I can see what they were doing. They're trying to do the whole matchy-match thing, but I think it was more of a detriment here because A, these titles sound dumb, and B, they don't really reflect what's happening in the book. So I liked basically everything about this entire series except for the plot. And since these are the second 2 books in the series, I can't really go into the plot at all. I basically can't tell you anything because the whole first book is the process of figuring out what exactly is the situation. So for me, the experience of reading these books is like going to a concert with a band you don't really like, but you're there with your friends, and so it's nice to hang out with your friends, and like the venue is really cool and they serve good food. So like overall, it's a good experience, but you're just sort of in the current. You're awash in a fairly meh thing. So in the first book, there's kind of one main character, Cammy Glass, but as we move through it, we get more of an ensemble cast as the side characters become more and more important. Some of the side characters, most of the characters are in high school or recently graduated, but their parents are also fairly important and well-developed characters, and they get just as interesting arcs as the kids do, which is unusual in YA literature. This is also the first series I've ever read with a bisexual female character who's like well done. It made me so joyous. These books are also like funny. Like people make jokes a lot. It's sort of classed as sassy gothic, which is not a genre I'd ever heard of before, but I think it applies perfectly here. There's countless numbers of books out there that you can read and no jokes are ever cracked. It never makes you laugh. It's never funny. So it's really weird to like get so much humor in a book that is not explicitly a humor book. So I gave these 4 out of 5 stars each. Moving on to the next thing I finished, that was Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, another Victober read. I'm sure you guys have all heard everything you could ever want to know about Jane Eyre. I did not do a review of this because I feel like there's a lot of reviews about this book already because it is so popular. So what I did was I took a look at the use of reading, the word, and the activity. And then my cat threw my phone on the floor. Reading in Jane Eyre, and I made a video about who does that when and what it means. This is like the, I don't know, 6th time I've read Jane Eyre or something, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Natch. The next thing that I finished was also a Victober read. That was Arms and the Man, which is a play by George Bernard Shaw. This is a comedy in 3 acts. It takes place in 1885 during the Serbo-Bulgarian War. Our main character is a young Bulgarian woman named Raina. She is engaged to a dashing cavalry officer in the Bulgarian army. After the house has settled down, she hears gunshots in the streets, and then a man in Serbian uniform climbs in through her window. Scandal! Fortunately, he's not Serbian. He's a Swiss mercenary fighting for the Serbian army. And even though they're on different sides, they kind of arrive at a friendly accord and she hides him in her room. And then the next 2 acts are sort of the fallout from that. It's got a bit of a comedy of errors feel. We, the audience, know all of the complicated relationships between the characters and like where the secret photograph is hidden, but the characters don't, so we get to laugh knowingly at them. Even though parts of it are like about illustrating how horrific war is, I still found it really funny, and so I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And finally, I reread Kissing the Witch, Old Tales in New Skins by Emma Donoghue. She's most famous for writing Room, but this is the only book of hers that I've read. I do own Wonder. It's on the list. This is a collection of really well done fairy tale retellings with a feminist interpretation. It still has all of the sort of dark whimsy and the narrative style that you would expect from an old school fairy tale. And it's still set in like nebulous historical time, but everything is changed a little bit in pretty non-anachronistic ways to give it the feminist interpretation. Some of the stories are made queer, either in changing who the princess or our heroine falls in love with. So in the Cinderella story, Cinderella doesn't fall in love with the prince, she falls in love with the fairy godmother. Sometimes they change a male character into a female character, so the Beast in Beauty and the Beast is female. And some of the stories are not queer, but are looking at things from a different perspective. So in the Snow White retelling, Snow White and her stepmother at first get along well, but the sort of strife is introduced into their relationship by the king sort of wondering aloud which of them is more beautiful. And you get to sort of see the problems that are introduced when women are put in conflict with each other over appearances. The stories are also tied together, so they're narrated in first person. And the first one is Cinderella, and at the end of the Cinderella story she asks her fairy godmother, you know, what did you do before you were a fairy godmother? And then the fairy godmother goes on to tell her story, where she is the protagonist, and then a character in that story tells the next story, and we move back through time. I think it's a really well done collection. It's also super short, and the font is big, a great one afternoon read with a nice cup of tea. I gave it 4 out of 5, 4.5 out of 5. So that's all I got through in October. I did start all of the other books that I was planning to read for my readathon, so I'm in the middle of Our Mutual Friend by Charles Dickens, which was my last Victober read, and I have started The Infernal World of Branwell Bronte, which is the biography of Branwell by Daphne du Maurier, and I've also started The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. So those are the books I will be reading. I did not get to any Shakespeare's this month because I was busy with the readathons, but I am still planning to finish all the complete works of Shakespeare by the end of the year. This month I've got my eye on Troilus and Cressida and Cymbeline, basically the plays that I want to read that are not the histories. I'm sorry, histories. You have a worse reputation. So thanks very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you later.